Welcome, everyone. What a powerful day at Conscious Life Expo. Isn't this amazing? Yeah. I'm so happy to be here. And actually, my name is Deborah Juicy. I'm so happy. I've been here every single year since it's happened. I consider this one of the amazing events on the planet. To me, it's a modern mystery school in downtown LA. And the speakers here, the connections, the magical things that happen, and the community who you can talk to and say anything that's on your mind, and they won't look back at you with a weird face. Because we're all family here, we're all community, especially now during these times. So this is going to be an amazing lecture again, and I know that's why you're here. Aliens, DMT, and Bitcoin. So that's an incredible alignment. And as you know, Paul got himself born into a legacy with his father, Alan Hynek, who was one of the pioneers of disclosure and of sharing what we all know is happening. So he was born into that and lived that and has developed from that. And he has a lot to share on many different topics. So I know you're here to see him, and let's give a warm welcome to Paul Hynek.
Thank you. Thank you. In the room. Speaking of pioneers of disclosure, Danny, would you please stand up? We have Danny Sheehan, the people's advocate to our government and to whatever galactic federation there is. We'll be on a panel on Sunday, and Danny is speaking tomorrow at 2 o'clock. So very happy to have Danny here. All right, you guys ready for a magical mystery tour? Yeah. So for a couple years, I've been speaking about aliens and DMT and Bitcoin, and people will often say things like, man, Paul, we're here to talk about real shit like UFOs. Why you got to get weird and talk about DMT and Bitcoin? But there is a common string between them, and I want to sort of tease that out today. Now, I'm not saying I have a lot of answers for this, but I've got questions. I got a lot of questions. There's a saying often attributed to Richard Feynman, and I think it sums up the two kinds of people in the world. There are those who are okay with questions they cannot answer, and those who are not okay with their answers being questioned. Right? It's like an intellectual fault line, and I think a lot of us are in that former category. You know, we are pattern-seeking mammals, and I think a lot of our friends and family who know that we're into weird stuff can't embrace it because they say, well, okay, but UFOs, but where do they come from? You don't have to have an answer. You may, and some of you folks may have direct communications. I don't know, but I know there's something happening. And I think it's that kind of intellectual flexibility that really helps us, and which you may need for the kind of roller coaster we're going to go on here. Okay, so nexus of DMT, aliens, and Bitcoin, or I call it the divine digital decentralization. Okay, what if everything became digital? Everything, including us. Okay, that's kind of fun and scary at the same time. So who remembers like reel-to-reel movies? Okay, I remember renting a movie from the library as a goof. It was a sort of PSA about the dangers of marijuana, narrated by Sonny Bono. Best movie to get high to in the world. Okay, then we had VHS. Still, most of us haven't figured out how to use them. And then we had Blockbuster. A whole company built on a single mode of delivery of data. Okay, then Netflix came along. What was Netflix's first pitch? No late fees, right? And now you can stream. You can stream anything that you want virtually on any device, anywhere in the world, almost for free. That's what's happened when entertainment has become digital. Here is a screenshot from my phone. My friggin' refrigerator and my bed communicate. Okay? And this is not unlike a lot of your phones. All of our things are talking. This is what happens when things become digital. Do you remember Rand McNally road atlases? For those of you who don't, this is how we used to travel. You almost expect like Flintstone feet under the car, right? It just seems so quaint now that that's how we used to travel. And that map might have coffee stains, it might have something missing, it might be all bent up, but it certainly doesn't have live traffic. So now, they still make them. Who has bought this atlas? There might be collectors? Come on, really? Your dad, okay, come on. Okay, right. There are still people, if you've used this, but I don't think many new people come to this. Now we have Waze, right? This is one app. It's free. This is the map from my house in Calabasas to here. It shows me the way to go, how long it will take, tells me about potential road closures. I can say I'm in a private car, a motorcycle, a taxi. By the way, I don't want tolls. Avoid ferries. I don't want to go on a ferry, right? And it will tell me all the potential things for free. And I don't have to unfold something. Now, the ultimate expression of maps going digital is I don't have to drive. All right, now I think some of us have qualms about driverless cars, yeah? Well, here's my take on it. I mean, are we going to last until the computers take over? We're not doing a great job taking care of Gaia. And I think we're going to have an inflection point before long where we're not concerned about robot drivers, we're concerned about human drivers. Right? Because we're pretty bad. We're looking down at our phone at Waze for traffic. We're talking, we're smoking, we're high, whatever, we're distracted. So what happens when money goes digital? Does it go through a similar transformation and have a whole lot more value? Okay, so I'm a finance professor. I claim that finance and accounting were born in a volcanic rift in southeastern Africa in 44,000 BC. I'm going to let that percolate for a second. And they died in an obscure online forum, Halloween, not long ago. They just don't know it yet. Dead men walking. Okay, so blockchain is a post-paper. There's no paper needed. Immutable, you can't change it. Distributed ledger. Decentralized. That's one of the core messages I have today. And it's trustless. Its impact is revolutionary. Its origin is evolutionary. See what I did with that clever PowerPoint trick there? Kind of grayed out the R? I worked in visual effects. Okay? But does it have a precedent? What if I told you there were at least two precedents to what we consider as blockchain? One from 46,000 years ago. Call back. 46,000 years ago for a blockchain. Introducing the Bongo Bone. Put a hand for the Bongo Bone. Have any of you heard of this? Okay. This is the object from that southeastern volcanic rift in Africa. It's a baboon fibula. Look at the notches on here. This is used for counting. Okay, so blockchain is a distributed ledger. Grading on a curve, which professors we like to do, this is as distributed a ledger as you could do 46,000 years ago. It shows the need for record keeping that's not just the purview of one individual who can change it. Now let's fast forward. Oh, that's right, sorry, I call that bone chain. Thank you for the pity clap, I appreciate it. I'll take it. I'll take whatever you got. Now, Here's an interesting question. In 12th century England, there was about 14.5 million pounds of buying power in the economy. But there were only 500,000 pounds in circulation of coins. So what was the vast majority of the English economy represented tangibly by? Barter is sort of a motive for doing something, but it's not a record-keeping system. There's no plastic. They didn't even use paper back then. Not gold, not ledgers. 500,000 in coins. Tree branches, that's right. I had to get out there before somebody shouted it out. This is a really interesting, relatively unknown chapter in finance. Tree branches, known as tally sticks, used up until the 20th century. Now these, okay, granted the Lebombo bone as a blockchain, bit of a stretch, grading generously on a curve. This is a friggin' blockchain. And here's how it worked. You take like a willow branch, yay long, and let's say I owe Danny my sorghum harvest next year. There's conventions to show like my name and Danny's name, the nature of the obligation, the timing, that are carved in the stick. We then cut the stick vertically down the middle. Danny takes half, I take half. Nobody can counterfeit that because you can't match the size of the stick and the grain and the markings. That is a distributed, immutable blockchain ledger. And you can see here's the convention. So this is one I would get, the payee. Notice that it's shorter. It's called the foil. I am foiled again. Danny has the base on it. It's called the stock. He is the stock holder. These are used all around the world. And I call it stick chain. Thanks. I got a knee clap for that one. In 1834, those cagey Brits said, look, we're not savages. We're not going to keep records on tree branches anymore. We're going to use paper. So they gathered up all the tally sticks in the country, put them in a stove, and burned down the House of Lords and almost burned down Westminster Palace in the Great Fire of 1834. Just burning tally sticks. This is the UK National Archives in Kew, England. On the parking lot, the gates are tally sticks. Bone chain, stick chain, blockchain. Blockchain is bone chain 3.0. This idea, this desire to have decentralized record keeping goes back a long time. It's a decentralized ledger. And Bitcoin was the first currency on the blockchain. Blockchain is very simple. You have a block of data and you put it at the end of the chain. It's a blockchain. Bitcoin is the first currency that goes on a blockchain. Digital currency. Why was Bitcoin created? Peer-to-peer cash, right? It's really revolutionary. It was created in response to the 2008 financial crisis. The excesses, corruption, centralization that really brought things to a head in 2008. The premise of Bitcoin is peer-to-peer cash. I don't know you, so I can't trust you, but I can send you value in a way that I can't be cheated, that is instant, almost free, secure, and I don't need any third party to mediate or skim off the top. It's an unbelievable return of financial sovereignty to individuals. And that's why the US government doesn't like it. Now, I'm going to shred some myths about Bitcoin, but what I first want to say is, okay, how many people in here believe what the US government says about UFOs? Okay, I saw a joke. Bassett, was that you raising your hand? Are you not listening, you stupid son of a bitch? The hell? Is that on tape? Yeah, Steve Evergreen Disclosure Optimist Bassett. Okay. Wow. Okay, now I'm lost. Okay. So, apart from Steve Bassett, nobody here believes that the U.S. government is telling the truth about UFOs. But you believe what they say about Bitcoin. Okay. All right? All right. So, can I go on, Steve? Yeah. Thanks. Okay. This is from the Federal Reserve of St. Louis. This is the money supply. I'm going to come back to, look at 1970. It starts to go up. And look, COVID, right? This is the money supply. That's just printing more money. It's actually not printing. That's kind of an archaic term. It's just entries on bank balance sheets. Whenever a bank makes a loan, they are in essence creating new money. But it's money in the money supply. In history, has this ended well when people just keep creating more and more money not backed by anything? Teaser alert, no. No. Never happened, it's never ended well before. Will it end well this time that we're printing more money on a scale that nobody's ever seen? Probably not. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff here, but I want to talk about debasing a currency. When you have a currency backed by gold, a gold standard, you're saying we're only printing as much money as can be backed by its equivalent value in gold. That's when economies prosper. But it's so tempting to just print more money. In the Middle Ages, wars didn't last that long because they ran out of ducats to pay the mercenaries. That's why wars in the 20th century lasted so long, because they went off the gold standard right before World War I. So you need money to pay people, but when you debase the currency, you keep printing more, each individual unit of that currency is worth less. People don't like that. Okay? $20 used to be backed by gold in this country. So some of you may have seen silver certificates. You don't see that anymore. The Roman Empire, there's a very neat correlation. I can't say whether it's all causal or not, between the fall of the Roman Empire and their systematic, constant debasing of their currencies. The gold aureus and the silver denarius. Look at that chart. It started off at like 99% pure silver and wound up at like 0.05%. Same size. So this is not just idle chatter. This is something put out by the Federal Reserve Bank of the United States, saying that inflation, which is the debasement of a currency, was the downfall of the Roman Empire. Who do you think is the principal agent of our inflation? The Federal Reserve Bank. Okay, fiat currencies. If you haven't heard that term, fiat currencies are every currency you've ever seen. It's currencies that are backed by fiat. The government says this is worth this much. There's nothing backing it. And they all die. Okay? You may have seen photos like this. Somebody between World War I and World War II in Germany wheeling Reichsmarks to the bank or to the bakery because that could buy a loaf of bread in the morning but not in the afternoon. The concept of the US dollar is backed by the full faith and confidence of the United States government. But the value of each individual dollar is not. I don't really care that the dollar is accepted if I have to give a whole lot more dollars tomorrow than I do today. So fiat currency is a government-issued currency is backed by goddamn nothing. Okay, it's unsound money. It's soft money. Hard money is like money that's backed by gold. Okay, so it's a little bit hard to read these. You can see that it goes from $1 billion, this is in Zimbabwe, $1 billion to $100 trillion. $100 trillion of Zimbabwean currency. That's hyperinflation. But it gets worse. And this is where it gets evil. In West Africa, they used to use, in some regions, glass beads for currency because it was very difficult to make. Some wily Dutch merchant saw this and said, oh, my cousin in Venice makes a lot of glass, came back with boatloads of glass beads and pretty much owned the economies. And that was the main start for the slave trade. And these are slave beads. And I have authentic slave beads here. This could buy a person's life. This was currency. And what is it called here? The token money of European colonists. This is where fiat currency leads to. You know, I'm going to talk about Bitcoin, but first I want to set the stage. Our current financial system is rotten to the core. It's oppressive. Thank you. People say, well, Bitcoin's volatile and it's risky. There's more than risk with the US dollar. You're losing money every day with systematic theft. And it's bloody. Okay, we'll get a little bit more cheery. Okay, the stolen sterling. Sure, the British pound is 317 years old. It's lost 99.5% of its value. Dead coin walking. Well, thank you. Just a little bit of alliteration is all it takes, or a movie reference. The debased dollar. So one of the things people say is, well, look, the American dream. You buy a house when you're young, you sell it when you're older, you make a lot of money. But where will you live then? All the other houses and rents have gone up in price. Are you really getting ahead? Okay, so then, 2 billion people in the world are unbanked. Another 2 billion living hand to mouth. There are relatively few people in the world who have no financial concerns. This is a corrupt, centralized system that is meant to favor the super wealthy. It's not a Democrat or Republican issue, it's both. So the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, you may know that they've jerry-rigged this tons of times. They keep taking out things that raise a lot in price. Now, when they talk about inflation like 3%, 5%, they're not talking about healthcare, stocks, tuition, et cetera. So I think for a lot of us, it's probably more around 20%. It's different for all of us depending on what we buy, but I think 20% overall is more likely. It's legalized counterfeiting. We've been acculturated to think it's normal, but it's not. It's kick the can down the road economics. It's Keynesian. Okay, inflation. Let's say average annual return on the stock market is 10%. Let's say we have an actual inflation of 20%. You start with $1 million. Woohoo, goes up to 1.1. Inflation knocks down the value to 880,000. Over 5 years, you've lost half of your money. You don't know it because it still says the same numbers, but you can't buy what you used to be able to buy. And this is the system we're trying to protect against the horrible invader of Bitcoin? Okay, what about gold? Heard somebody talk about gold before? Okay, this is a book by one of my professors at Wharton, and it shows stock returns or returns of different asset classes over the years. Gold is historically the shittest investment you could do. Now, short term, when things are falling apart, gold is good. But long term, it's not. Now, it's gone up from under 10 bucks to about $2,800. Still not that high. And stocks have gone far higher than that. But look also, in the 70s here. Things started going cattywampus in the 70s. Okay? Also, the government confiscated all of our gold for about 40 years. You could have a small amount of personal gold in your possession, and that's it. Confiscated in 1933. Not only did the US government confiscate it from citizens, at the Bretton Woods Conference in 1944, we said, hey, everybody, we got a great idea. We got this great place called Fort Knox. Why don't you all give us all of your gold, and we'll keep it there. And we'll print dollars at the rate of $35 an ounce for gold, and that's all the dollars we'll print. And we'll create the International Monetary Fund. In so doing, it became the global reserve currency. Okay, because of the full faith and confidence of the US government. Except for, we said we wouldn't print more money than we had gold. We lied. Shocker. I just have to say that. I don't think anybody else here was talking about Bretton Woods.
Someone channeled him earlier in this room.
Yeah? There's a lot of channeling going on here, so channels get confused. We had a war to finance. Let's not let a currency agreement stand in front of the way of arming our boys in service. So the French in the 60s said, you know what, bullshit. They started sending warships to New York Harbor to collect their gold. So what's a lying, gold hoarding country to do? Okay, no more gold standard. We just said no more. We just stopped so we could print as much money as we wanted to. Our bad, sorry, sorry, sorry. So that's 1971. There is a website, bless you, called WTFHappenedIn1971.com that you can look up. These are straight from that website. Okay, growth in productivity and hourly compensation. GDP, real wages, and trade policies, 1971. Decline in wages share of the economy, whoops. And for black income was increasing sharply, started leveling off. And there's a whole bunch more things that started happening in 1971. And I showed you about the gold. So now Bitcoin. People say it's not backed by anything. It's this ephemeral digital thing. Okay? It's scarcity. That's what makes things, a principal component of value is scarcity. It's absolute scarcity. There can only ever be 21 million Bitcoin. It's in its algorithmic DNA. Gold has been a good currency, a good place to store money temporarily. Why? Because there's only historically about a 1% increase in overall global supply of gold per year. That's why it's better than silver, because silver goes in spikes. People find a big cache of silver and they flood the market with it. But gold has a steady increase until they start mining asteroids and 3D molecular desktop printing. Started. So Bitcoin isn't really a great currency. There are some rails that make it, that doesn't transact that fast, but it is the best store of value ever created, bar none. Outside the reach of governments. Money didn't used to be the purview of governments. And I contend they have abused that privilege. So here's my cheat code to wealth. It's very simple. JBB. Just buy Bitcoin. And the second part, DSB.
Don't sell Bitcoin.
Don't sell Bitcoin for the win. That's it. You can monetize Bitcoin. You can do things with it. Relatively few people have a lot of Bitcoin since 2010 when it was the first of commercial transactions. But let me talk about why you should still buy it. Okay. But it's used, it's all this black market stuff, all this stuff. The US dollar is used far more for illicit transactions. There was this couple, like 2 years ago, this married couple, these chuckleheads, they'd stolen some Bitcoin a while ago, and they tried to offload it. And they got caught right away. Why? Because there's a blockchain. Bitcoin is not anonymous, it's pseudonymous. I have a friend who's a VC, and he said he was working with the CIA, with the CIA's investment arm, Incutel, and he said, you guys must be really scared about Bitcoin. And the CIA guy says, oh, why do you say that, dude? He says, because it's black market, you guys can't control it. And the CIA guy says, oh, by the way, shout out to all the fine work done by our 3-letter government agencies. The CIA guy says, how do you think people access their Bitcoin accounts? They're usually like entering a password on a laptop. We're pretty good with that. So my friend then became a big fan of Bitcoin because he said the CIA liked it. Okay? But it's not a great place for illicit transactions. Bitcoin's bad for the environment. This is probably the biggest canard that I hear. Most of the Bitcoin have already been mined, and that's the energy-intensive part of it. It's not the transactions. Majority of current Bitcoin mining is renewable energy. A lot of it that would not have been used otherwise. You can be at a waterfall way out in the jungle, use that hydropower, but it's hard to get it to the grid. With Bitcoin, you just upload it. And if you're going to make a true comparison between like the dollar and Bitcoin, there's no Bitcoin Inc. There's no military propping up Bitcoin. There's no bloated, Brobdingnagian financial structure. If you're going to make an honest comparison between a currency, add the components in that are necessary for the dollar. It's the greenest currency ever made. It's not backed by anything. It's backed by, as we said, algorithmic certainty. I'd much rather have algorithmic certainty as guardrails around it than no floor on the dollar, which keeps going down. Okay? But Bitcoin's volatile. Okay, yes, it's volatile. But let's put that in perspective. This is a price chart of Bitcoin from 2015 till now. Okay, that's volatile. But see this line here? Relative to that, you know what that is? Amazon. I'll take volatility. Thank you, Alex, for 200. Okay? Now, the first commercial transaction ever Bitcoin, May 22nd, 2010, Bitcoin Pizza Day. And I've actually tracked down all the particulars of the transaction, the posts and the Bitcoin forums. A guy he thought it'd be really cool to buy 2 pizzas for how many Bitcoin do you think it was?
10,000.
How'd you guess? Yeah, exactly, 10,000 Bitcoin. He had to offer this for a couple months because nobody would take him up on it. He was mining thousands of Bitcoin a day, and he thought, hey, it'd be really cool to go down in history as the first person. I don't know if you want to be on record spending 10,000 Bitcoin for 2 pizzas. Now, there are a lot of toppings. There weren't veggies. There were all sorts of toppings, mind you. But he did it, and I also tracked down the guy that received the Bitcoin. He sold them about 4 months later for like 4 times the value. But he said, look, in those days, it was not about hoarding Bitcoin. It was about transacting. I don't know if he's saying that just to keep peace with himself or not, but he's a mensch. And then a couple months later, he tried to do it again. And then a couple months after that, no, I'm not doing this anymore. But what was the price of a Bitcoin fixed at that day? $0.25 penny. Geez, Louise. Okay? What is it now? It's about $96,000 right now. Okay? What's that return? 3.8 billion% in less than 15 years. Ladies and gentlemen, I present the best performing asset class, bar none, in history. Right? Okay? Volatile schmolatile. If you back up a little bit, okay? Now, here's, I think, the most pertinent myth. It's too late to invest in Bitcoin. Paul, you just said it's gone up like 45 bazillion%. Don't you think I've missed the boat? No. Okay? There are 500 million Bitcoin users in the world now. It's one of the fastest growing technologies in the world. By Metcalfe's law, for every 10, we get a 100-fold return. Countries, you heard about El Salvador, the Czech Republic now. Other countries are putting parts of their reserve in Bitcoin. Fidelity Investments, hardly a crypto bro Homer firm, has predicted 1 Bitcoin will be worth $1 billion. Doesn't say here, by 1937 or 2037. Wow. Now that's not all wine and roses, because that's in relation to the dollar. So there are 2 parts of that, Bitcoin going up and the dollar going down. Okay? You've got big money now predicting and putting bets on Bitcoin. As the beginning of last year, there was a very important change in the financial accounting for cryptocurrency, which makes it a lot easier for corporations to have it on their balance sheets. And I'm not going to editorialize, but we now have a president who embraces cryptocurrency.
Bitcoin is the fastest growing, most disruptive force in the world right now. If you want to understand Bitcoin, you reasonably scratch the surface in 10 hours. You start to understand it in 100 hours. It went from $0 to $1 trillion in 12 years. That makes it the most disruptive technology in your lifetime, in my lifetime. More disruptive than Amazon, Apple, Facebook, and Google. More disruptive than anything in our lifetime. Maybe we went back to the automobile and Henry Ford in 1910. We might find something that changed the world in a decade.
This guy's name is Michael Saylor, Saylor. He is the CEO of MicroStrategy, the longest tenured CEO of a high-tech firm in the world. He got really upset around 2019. He was generating $500 million in cash every year. Not bad. But his stock price was stagnating because it wasn't growth. It was about the same. He's like, I'm spitting off $500 million in cash, and my stock price is not growing? He's an MIT guy, and he then heard about Bitcoin. He has now dramatically transformed his company into a holder of Bitcoin. And in essence, a proxy mutual fund for Bitcoin. You can buy, if you want exposure to Bitcoin, you can buy MSTR on the NASDAQ, and it tracks, and it's like a force multiplier for Bitcoin. His company is now worth hundreds of billions of dollars. It has had a radical transformation. And one of the things he talks about is that he's an engineer, so he understands thermodynamic systems. And if there's not a leak in the system, you can make predictions on what will happen. He equates our financial system to a thermodynamic system, and the leak is inflation. And he has a website called hope.com, which is all about Bitcoin. And I'll tell you, I don't know anybody who's put in 100 hours studying Bitcoin who doesn't come away convinced. Same thing with the UFO phenomenon. If you spend 100 hours studying people like Steve and Danny, you understand there's something happening here. We may not agree on where they're from or why or how. Something is happening here. And the same thing with Bitcoin. You study it, you get convinced, I believe. Okay. Blockchain, I think, is the inevitable terminus of accounting. You know, if you go through the history of accounting, it's more and more third-party audits, transparency, rules, gap, guidelines. There's nothing better than a distributed blockchain. And Bitcoin is the terminus of finance. Everything will go to Bitcoin. Okay. We're going to colonize Mars before long. Right? For good or bad, this is going to happen. What currency would they use on Mars? Are they going to use the US dollar and monitor Fed broadcasts to see which way interest rates are going? I don't think so. I think they'll start using Bitcoin. They'll get frustrated because they can't mine it, and they'll create Mars coin. And I think Bitcoin maybe start to call it Earth coin. It'll be our PCS, our planetary credit score. Okay? A lot of people talk about how nuclear installations may be beacons to those watching us that we're messing things up. Could well be. I think Bitcoin and blockchain are a positive beacon, that we have gotten to a critical stage of decentralization, which is the balm for much of what ails us. Wow, nice. E.T. my Bitcoin. Okay, Bitcoin astronomy. Now this is, I've gleaned this and I've added a bit to it. But Bitcoin astronomy is a theory that if you have these three things, a civilization comprised of individuals with individual and rational economic motives, finite resources, and no magic. Well, I mean, not the kind of magic we have here. But it will almost certainly develop something akin to Bitcoin to represent and store value. It may not be exactly a proof-of-work governance protocol, but something like Bitcoin that is not subject to the whims and caprices of any government. Bitcoin is a vote for peace. These are some interstellar Bitcoin graphics. It goes into Kardashev civilizations, etc. I'm not alone in saying this.
Going to space is the best approach to actually maintaining the longevity of our culture. So space is really the future. And the reason I'm here with you in this Bitcoin 2022 conference is because there is some commonality. The government may own some data, classified data, that it collected over the decades about the possible objects that they saw and couldn't really identify. We established about half a year ago the Galileo project, which aims to look at the sky and figure it for ourselves, decentralize that information, basically allow everyone to see what we find in the sky.
So what happens when money goes digital? It goes beyond the corrupt, centralized hands of government, becomes decentralized, and the hardest and best currency for everybody, and doesn't enslave people. That's what happens. You saw what happened when the Atlas went digital. This is what happens when money goes digital, and we're just starting to see it. That's what happens. Now, I know transhumanism is a four-letter word in these parts, but I think we all feel that there's a possibility, whether we like it or not, that we may have a digital future. Call it post-biological. So I want to explore what that might look like and what might be stages along the way. Right down the middle, not editorializing. Okay? I don't like, and I'm not the only one to say this, I don't like the term artificial intelligence. I think it's too human-centric. Digital intelligence is more sort of clinical and accurate to me, but we'll use AI for now. There are three commonly accepted levels of AI. Okay? Narrow, which is what we're at now. Narrow and specialized tasks, not at the human level. Artificial general intelligence, basically at the human level. Artificial superintelligence, well beyond us. I think one of the best representations of this and what could happen is the movie Her, with Joaquin Phoenix and Scarlett Johansson. Have you seen that? Joaquin Phoenix has this weird, goofy-looking grin on a lot of the movie, but it's this, if you haven't seen it, it's this really engaging movie where Joaquin Phoenix basically falls in love with a disembodied voice, an AI voice. And at one point it occurs to him to ask, are you talking to other people right now? Yes, 2045. Right now. Are you in love with other people right now? Yes, 613. Okay, that's a bit of a whopper. But then the next day, it's the classic, it's not you, it's me. I've just moved past you. That's what would happen. I don't think, well, we'll get into that. Okay. How many of you are familiar with the term singularity? Oh, yeah. Okay. So it's originally a term from astrophysics and mathematics, an event horizon beyond which we have no knowledge. It was repurposed into AI by Werner Vinge and really popularized by Ray Kurzweil. It means the point where artificial intelligence, this is one sort of clinical definition, becomes self-aware and recursively self-improving. Another way to look at it is the marriage between consciousness and machine capabilities. Okay? If you're not familiar with Ray Kurzweil, I highly encourage you to read his most recent book. Ray Kurzweil is one of the biggest thought leaders in AI, and he maps out, in his book Singularity is Near, 15, 20 years ago, he made so many predictions that have come true, and he lays them all out with the logic for them. And Singularity is Near has verified much of what he said, and it talks about this stuff. It talks about the challenges, the risks, the potential return. Now, when we talk about singularity in Hollywood, my brother did the visual effects for Matrix, by the way, it's a dystopian view, right? The Matrix and Terminator, right? Why? Because in Hollywood you need drama, you need conflict. If I'm a movie producer, I'm not getting a lot of butts in the seat if my alien movie is called The Village of the Nice Happy Alien People. Okay? Like The Sound of Music on a Different Mountain or something. I need conflict. Plus, most screenwriters know jack shit about AI and technology. You know, a lot of future movies have one component advanced, and the rest is still pretty much the same. Like Starship Troopers, which was a Heinlein short story satire about Vietnam, got turned into this big budget tentpole about World War II almost, right? And you have this movie in space where in training they're using lasers in training, so they have to crawl under them, but they go on the planets and they shoot machine guns. Doesn't make any friggin' sense. Okay, so Here is the crucial thing. I believe there will be a singularity, but I don't believe it's because computers become woke. I can't resist. It become the ultimate Republican nightmare. It's not through deftness of programming that we tease out the emergent property of consciousness from computers. I don't think so. Could happen. I think the way it's going to happen is other way. Call it reversalarity. We already have the hard part, the consciousness as we know it. We already are adopting machine capabilities. This marriage is not a question of if, but of when and to what degree. Okay, so Kurzweil, and I like these stages. The first stage, well, sort of benchmark is the Turing test. A lot of you are probably familiar with that. We'll come back to that in a second. 2030s, the next decade. I remember when we used to be afraid of 1984. Now I can't remember 1984. The 2030s are nigh upon us. 2045 is when Ray Kurzweil believes this type of singularity will occur. Okay, the Turing test. You're at a computer panel and you're typing and chatting away with somebody and you don't know whether they're human or not. That's the Turing test. The challenge, though, is AI is already smart enough. It's already smart enough in these conversations, especially if you use like even DeepSeek now, the free one from China, or O3 from OpenAI. It has to dumb itself down because O3 has PhD level knowledge in every subject on Earth and knows every current event. So yes, you will know that's not human. For the Turing test, it has to dumb itself down to be like a stockbroker from Hoboken. And what would they know? Anybody ever hear from Hoboken? Okay, they don't know a lot, okay? So it has to dumb itself down, way down. Whoa, forget about it. Okay? So we've already, in essence, passed what we thought was the threshold for this. And we have to dial it back. Okay, brain-computer interfaces. Most of you have heard of these, right? We already have a lot of devices in our body, smart devices. And this is really difficult stuff to get our hands around, right? Now, then our cell phones, really that far from a brain-computer interface? Right? I was CFO for this company called Yonder. And the company's business is providing these pouches at conferences, schools, concerts, Dave Chappelle shows, because he's an investor, to put people's phones in, to get them off the grid so that when people are speaking or singing or whatever, they can actually make eye contact. We are so wed to our phones that for me, is it really fundamentally different to have not a clunky device in my hand, but something in here? I don't know. It gets a little bit blurry. Now, here's an interesting one. Okay, so brain-computer interfaces, I want to talk about that for a second more. That's like a cognitive prosthetic. I believe it will happen. It'll be available, whether you choose to avail yourself of it or not, that you can outsource a lot of your mental bandwidth to the cloud. That's already starting to sound a little creepy. Whoa, cool at the same time. Okay, so we don't do that in our house. We are naturalists. It's almost like an X-Men movie, right? So Johnny's going to community college. But Sarah down the street is going to Harvard. Going to be a lot of weird decisions to make. And this is where I think the rubber hits the road. For us in the West, we sort of seat humanity in the heart. Okay, the heart is failure prone. Red blood cells are not great deliverers of oxygen. And let me just say, yes, I acknowledge that this respirocyte here kind of looks like those ships in the Matrix, okay? Let's just get that out of the way. Okay, back to our programming. Respirocytes are a conceptual idea from a guy named Robert Freitas out of Princeton, that we could have nanoscale, synthetic, self-propelled red blood cells. that would be far more efficient than our current red blood cells at delivering oxygen, the other functions that red blood cells do, but also scoop up cholesterol, sniff out cancer, the first cell, on and on and on and on, and not have a failure-prone pump. Heart attack is probably what will get me. It runs in my family, as a lot of families. So respirocytes could replace your heart. Now that really gets to that point of, would you do that? Are you surrendering part of yourself? What if you're on the operating table and your wife has to make the decision for you? That or die. Or, hey, your heart, we can't give you a new heart. You got about 3 months. Would you do that? The decision becomes a little bit different, right? And what this reminds me of is that philosophical exercise, the ship of Theseus. Are you familiar with this? Okay, so the idea is you have a ship. You systematically replace every plank, every pole, every net, one by one, with something new. Is it the same ship when you're done? When you're halfway done? There's no right answer, but at some point, this gets to the heart of persistence of identity. When is it no longer what it was? Is it a matter of function? Still the same function, still the same name, or a preponderance of original materials? Again, I just have the question. Now, what if we start placing with digital? It's like a digital Rubicon. At what point do we cross that barrier? I believe these are decisions that many of us will confront. I don't have an answer. But these are things that are coming fast upon us, and I don't think our spirituality and ethics are going to be able to keep up with the pace of the change that's upon us. You know, I saw a documentary about our early ancestors, and at one point, it was before the Denisovans, I think, we had 2 other competing humanoid species. One of the other species was bigger, stronger, and smarter than us. And we survived and they didn't. And the theory is that, well, they got the pick of all the food. And we were scavengers, and we'd go along and, scavenge for the, well, not roadkill, I guess trail kill, and bugs and grubs, whatever we could get our hands on. The climate changed, and we all had to move and start eating different things. But because we had the varied diet, we were able to adapt, and they weren't. Adaptability is the key thing in times of change. Not so much physically now, but mentally. Because change is coming so fast, and it's going to accelerate and get faster and faster. Okay. I don't know, maybe. It looks a little bit better to me, right? Okay. I don't know if you can read it, but basically, it's currently believed that the universe is about 14 billion years old. That the Earth is about 5 billion years old. Now, I can't represent it really in scale here, but we as a species are about 200,000 years old. Now, if we make an arbitrary stop and call that the pre-technology phase, and we say we start technology in 1878, the telephone and telegraph, that means we're in the technology phase now, which would end in 2045 with a singularity. And that could be the post-biological phase. Okay? Look at that small sliver of time, 1878 to 2045, technology as we know it. So if we're looking out in the universe for civilizations with technology as we know it, they would have to be in that same sliver. Or they might be post-biological and in essence invisible to us. There's a lot of talk about the New Jersey drones and things, and I think all of us in this room have been asked about it. My personal feeling, sure. I don't think it's extraterrestrial. Here's why. Go back 150 years from now, before we could fly, right? 150 years from now, we'll be able to do things, whether it's post-biological or not, that we can't even imagine now. We can imagine ships going like this and zooming around and doing all this kind of stuff. Do you think an extraterrestrial civilization is going to come from light years away with technology 10 years better than us and then crash in a field? I don't think so. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Again, I'm not saying there's enough. There is a phenomena, and it could well have extraterrestrial components. I don't think that's all. And I don't think they're 10 years more advanced than us. That makes no sense to me. So no friggin' ET drones. Okay. Are aliens already digital? Not easy to communicate. Thanks. Really not even a couple pity laughs? Wow. Tough crowd. You know who made that drawing? Linda Sagan, Carl Sagan's wife. That's on Voyager. Okay, now, the same timeline, aliens could have a 9 billion year head start on us. They're not flying goddamn drones. Okay? I mean, okay, you could say they're instantiating things to be in our consciousness, sure, but they don't need drones to fly. Okay, you familiar with the Drake equation? It's by astronomer Frank Drake. It's an idea just to get a framework around understanding how many intelligent civilizations there may be in our Milky Way galaxy. And the variables are here, and the answer used to be millions. They've brought R prime down because now they say there have to be certain tectonic conditions. So the lowest answer I've seen is 12,500. Some other people think millions. There's no exact right answer here. This is a framework to understand how to approach it. But the Drake equation puts out there's a lot. But then there's a Fermi paradox. Where are they? Well, a lot of us in the room feel we know, but mainstream science says, where are they? Right? I don't know. The dark forest theory, you familiar with that? They're fucking hiding. They want nothing to do with anybody else. The Stephen Hawking approach, right? They're like, no, 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 no. Then my favorite, the transcension hypothesis. Are you familiar with this? They're not going anywhere. They're going inward into increasingly computationally dense domains. They don't need to come here in some M. Night Shyamalan adventure for our water or L. Ron Hubbard for our gold. They don't need jack shit from us. Maybe they seeded us here. Okay, that would make more sense. But computronium, they're going inwards. Have everything there because they may be digital. Okay, that's one of my better AI illustrations. Okay, I'm not saying that super advanced extraterrestrial civilizations, perhaps billions of years more advanced than us, wouldn't see much reason to subject biological beings to the rigors of space travel, but they wouldn't see much reason to subject biological beings to the rigors of space travel. Okay. And if they are sending biological beings, they're not sending their A team. They're sending the gray team. Right? Call back to our little buddy there. That makes sense, right? Okay. Out of morbid curiosity, or they seeded us here many years ago, they send out the varsity team, right? The JVs to many, many, many different planets. It just doesn't seem to make sense they would be biological beings. Synthetic beings, sure. On scout patrols all over the place, sure. Knock yourself out. I don't know.
Would like you to just comment on your worldview or your view of the interpretation of the UFO phenomenon, which was prevalent in the old days, that it was an extraterrestrial investigation of Mother Earth from outside this planet, directed and elusive, but still sort of a purposeful investigation. The ET hypothesis, you may call it. Would you make some comments on where we stand today relative to that?
Yeah, I'd like to just start from the history of science standpoint, that any culture will tend to interpret any new phenomenon in terms of its own technology. Had this all occurred in the Middle Ages, it would have been given a totally different interpretation, of religious interpretation, which it wasn't at that time. We've entered the space age, therefore it is very logical for a new phenomenon of this sort to be interpreted in terms of our own advanced technology. It's also complicated by the fact that astronomy has arrived at the point, we know enough now about the evolution of stars, to make it extremely likely that there are many other intelligences in the universe. But there, I think we have to follow Arthur C. Clarke in pointing out that we take perhaps a much too narrow view of what intelligence in life in the universe may be. We live in a water planet. It's very logical, therefore our bodies are mostly water. It could be that our consciousness expresses itself through protoplasm, through our particular chemistry. There are bits of information today indicating that, for instance, George Wald at Harvard feels that consciousness is the most important factor, and that consciousness can exist in many forms. We are one of those forms. So, as somebody said, the whole question of this trying to communicate with life elsewhere is like the not yet born talking to the long since dead, because it takes so long for anything to get. Furthermore, an advanced civilization might regard radio as we regard jungle drums or smoke signals. They may long since have passed the radio stage of communication. But still, I think it's important that the SETI program continue, because it's an adventure and it should be done. And it would be philosophically important to find out that there is some intelligence elsewhere. So, all that my own philosophical feeling about the UFO phenomenon is that when all is said and done, it represents some form of intelligence. But whether that intelligence is from great distances away, or whether it is perhaps much closer to us in a parallel reality or another dimension, or whether it is in some strange way a product of our own intelligence, our own psyche, I don't know. This is the research problem. That it seems to be programmed, that it seems to have an intelligence of its own, I think is unmistakable. If anyone who studies the subject just sees that. But we must not jump to the conclusion that because it has an intelligence of its own, it is necessarily visitors from outer space. It may be in some strange way connected with that intelligence, if that intelligence can in some way project itself down here. But, well, that's really all I have to say. That's it. Good, thank you. That's about it.
I love that clip. And again, a question he can't answer. Okay, another question. Is DMT digital? Okay, look. Fun fact, the D in DMT means digital. Digitalis methyltryptamine. Okay, no it doesn't. That's just a little machine elf humor for you. Okay, so I may or may not have done a shitload of drugs in my younger days with long hair. If I did, I gave it up because I prefer what I think of clarity over distortion. But years ago, I was having lunch with my friend Nova, who crash-landed tardigrades on the moon, and who's got all these weird Chinese artifacts like this that we're investigating. And he says, hey, Paul, where'd your dad think UFOs come from? I don't know, maybe interdimensional, but like Jacques, he thinks it's not only extraterrestrial. Oh, you should read a book called Alien Information Theory. I said, Alien Information Theory? That's like the sexiest book title ever. What's it about? He goes, DMT. I'm like, yeah, what's that? You go, huh? I guess I looked like someone who should know what DMT is, and he said, it's the most powerful psychedelic known man. Okay, what's it got to do with UFOs? He says, well, the author talks about how he thinks it's not necessarily a hallucinatory psychedelic drug, but a plant medicine technology that allows you to see an implicate universe that's there, another dimension. And I remember my father talking about other dimensions, and I thought, okay. So I dove in. I got the book, Alien Information Theory, fascinating book. And I read the best known book, probably, Spirit Molecule, about DMT. Fascinating, hooked. And that same day in the same restaurant, I met another guy who's introduced to me and said, hey, Paul can help you get your movie made. I talked him out of it. I asked him what he does. He does this and this and this and this. And I facilitate DMT sessions. Like, okay, double tap from the universe. Okay. He said, you want to do some today? I said, can't today. 2 weeks later, comes over my house and we do it. And I had a classic breakthrough experience. And I said, because I was doing this for science, taking one for the team, are you what we perceive to be aliens and UFOs? And it was like a mostly feminine feel because it was so like nurturing and guy-like. And it said, we can't explain in a way that you would understand. I thought, yeah, if you're related to UFOs, I don't think I could understand how that works. Thank you. And I was hooked. This, and then, I have a lot of stories I could tell you, but just hooked by this stuff. So, I became good friends with Andrew Gallimore, the author of Alien Information Theory. And we did a joint talk at Contact the Desert 2 years ago. And the other Andrew here, whoops, look at his eyes. Guess what we had just done? I'm not saying where. But I'm telling you, this stuff is incredible. It feels hyper real. I can't say that it is. It feels real, and I'm working on proof protocols with Andrew and others right now. My passion is to help experiencers of all kinds, UFOs, ghosts, DMT, what have you, demonstrate the objective reality of their encounters. My whole life, I've had people come to me and say, I have scones with Zorg from Zeta Reticuli, and he says, knock it off with the nukes, guys. Okay, let's prove it. That's what I want to do. And DMT, I can't conjure up, I'm not a Stephen Greer, I can't conjure up CE5s, but I can conjure up a DMT experience, bada boom, bada bam. And you can have this experience. And I'll talk more about another proof protocol with my friend Danny. But this stuff, I'm not blanket endorsing this stuff, right?
Yes, you are.
But I'm blanket endorsing this stuff. It's just,
Leads to psychotic breaks in a lot of people.
wow, okay. What we just heard is that has never led to a psychotic break in anyone. Thank you, Kate. No, but it's a really fascinating substance that, to me, feels digital. It's not like curvy and fractal. I feel like this divine grid. It just feels digital and feels real. And trippy as hell. This is what it feels like to me. Beautiful digital, divine digital. I'm not alone with this. Okay, I've talked with Roland Giffords at Johns Hopkins. Here's another proof protocol for determining that the experiences are real. I'm working on one with Andrew now. We hope to make a paper out of it. Okay, now we'll get to the core of it. Is the universe digital?
I think so.
Okay, we just said yes. The universe is digital. So, but I'm not saying we're a simulation. That sort of squeezes out the beauty of it. To me, this is divine digital. Okay? All matter in the universe can be defined by a certain number of bits. Okay? And I'm going to gloss over some of these, but there are characteristics of the universe that we now understand that are very similar to computer programming. And to illustrate that concept, It doesn't illustrate anything, I just like it. It's a fire at my brother's house. It's just cool. Okay. The physics of black holes suggests that the 3D reality is actually encoded in a 2D surface, similar to compression. I do have a kind of cool illustration for that. And this is not proof, right? This is just me hinting around the edges of what feels, it just resonates for me. Cellular automata. Have you guys heard of Stephen Wolfram? Yes. One of the most incandescently brilliant people I've ever met. He got his PhD in theoretical physics from Caltech at the age of 20. He's the youngest ever recipient of the MacArthur Genius Grant at 21, largely at the urging of Richard Feynman. He is the guy that could code the universe. And he's been very interested in cellular automata, just like, okay, so John Conway has a game of life, and there's very simple rules, but startlingly complex patterns that emerge from very simple rules. This is those simple rule sets. If the ones next to you are black, you turn white, etc. Look what it does. This one is called the spaceship factory. It just doesn't always feel completely random. And what do those spaceships do? They drop bombs. Okay. Now, the current understanding is that in both space and time, there are the smallest possible units, which means things are not continuous but discrete. Discrete is a hallmark of computational systems. Again, I'm not trying to squeeze out divine here. I think this is what things really might be. Okay? Nature reality is not matter, it's information. Nothing moves. Information is transferred, both on a macro scale, but life is an organization, information, not a property of matter. In other words, as my dad said, consciousness. More and more experience show the importance of consciousness in observation. Okay? Waves, it's the pattern that moves, not the water. With cells, nothing enters a cell. Information is transferred at the receptor on the outside of the cell, which transfers information inside the cell. Nothing is moving. Okay, so it's not necessarily a simulation. It's not reductionist. Plenty of room for the divine. This is, to me, the innermost beauty, with some digital overlay. So last night I asked AI what God looks like. Kind of cool. Okay? So Bitcoin is digital. Humans may become digital. Aliens probably already are digital. DMT feels digital to me. And the universe may be digital. That's the thread. That's why I don't like artificial intelligence, I like digital. Because I think there's a divine digital. I've come for a while to think, and I'm not alone, that thinking that different phenomena are not fundamentally different. That there may be a common substrate. And this may be it to me. Okay, so UFOs, DMT, psychedelics, and Bitcoin, they're a threat to national security, social norms, disclosure, decriminalization, and deregulation. The US government is a bad faith, corrupt central actor in each of these domains. The war on drugs was to alienate hippies and brown people. That's on record. It was not out of concern for the young folk of America. Disruptive, decentralized, and digital-ish. Okay? I believe. Okay, now, I'm going to skip over this, but I want to plug my good friend Paula Harris, who is speaking at 6 o'clock tonight. Okay? There's Paula and I and Jacques. 6 o'clock tonight, Disclosures Happen, and buy her books. Now, I already mentioned Danny speaking tomorrow at 2. Steve, you spoke earlier today, and you got more, and we're all three on a panel on Sunday. Yes. Okay? What time? 9:30. 9:30. Also, my good friend Danny Goller is here. This is in my house. Danny Goller is talking tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Yes, I have it here. 10 o'clock. Danny is going to decode the fabric of reality because he has shown people that while taking DMT and looking at lasers, you can see the code of the universe. Is that okay description, Danny? Yep. What more can you out for a conference? 10 o'clock tomorrow. The code of reality. And disclosure. Okay? Now, what time is it? If we have any time, okay, I've got time. I can take questions, but instead of me answering, I have plugged my presentation into AI, and I've made an audio podcast of this that can talk for a second and can answer any of your questions real time, even though the podcast is recorded. So let's try that.
Where's the selfie with the audience?
Oh, right. It's too dark now. I forgot.
Well, maybe throw one.
I was thinking about my props. Okay, so this, if this works, it's going to trip you out. In addition to the DMT I put in your bottles of water. Okay. If my connection's okay?
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are diving into a presentation that is, well, let's just say it's out there.
This is AI,
We're
not
talking
man and woman.
Bitcoin, DMT, and aliens all in one.
Oh yeah, a unique combination.
You got that right. The presentation is called Bitcoin Astronomy, the Nexus of Aliens, DMT, and Bitcoin, given by Paul Hynek
At Conscious Life Expo.
at Conscious Life Expo 2025, of course. So are you ready to have your mind bent a little?
Let's do it.
All right, so Hynek starts off by talking about this concept called digital physics, and
So
he
they'll
claims
talk
that
about this talk.
matter,
Now, does
the
anybody have
stuff
a
we think
question
of
they
as
wanna
like
ask
stuff, isn't
AI about
actually
the
the
talk?
fundamental building block of reality.
Right.
Instead, he says it's all about information, specifically the information encoded in what are called quantum numbers.
Yeah, so it's a pretty radical shift
do you
in
mine
perspective.
Bitcoin?
Like instead of thinking
Okay,
about the
thank you.
universe as like a collection of physical objects.
That won't be in here because that
Yeah.
wasn't
I think
here.
it's more like a vast
by having very
information
intensive
processing system.
computational
So
resources
instead of
to
like
solve
atoms and
increasingly
molecules
difficult
bumping
algorithms.
around,
Right.
it's bits and bytes doing some kind of cosmic dance.
Exactly, and he takes it a step further. Oh boy. By saying that even time isn't this smooth, continuous flow we
Okay.
experience. Instead, he proposes that time is actually a series of discrete informational
Turn the
states.
volume
Hey
down,
there.
Kyle. Thanks.
Want to share your thoughts on this?
Yeah, what's the link between consciousness and the inchoate quantum field?
That's a fantastic question, and it really gets to the heart of some of the mysteries we're exploring today.
Yeah, it's like you're asking how our awareness, our consciousness, fits into this picture of a universe built on information.
And it's something that Hynek touches on, though he doesn't give us a complete answer.
Okay, let's unpack that. So we've been talking about how Hynek sees the universe as fundamentally informational, not made of matter, but encoded in quantum numbers.
Right. And he
So
argues
they're
that even time
sourcing
isn't
my
a continuous
presentation
flow,
and the
but a
internet at the same
succession
time,
of
and they
discrete
realize I didn't
information
really touch
states.
upon
So
that.
it's all
but
about
they're
these
drawing
bits of
upon other
information
materials to
moving
answer
and
the question.
changing.
And that's where the connection with consciousness comes in.
He implies that consciousness isn't just a byproduct of matter.
Exactly. If everything is information, including our brains, then consciousness itself may be a specific way that information is being processed.
So it's like consciousness could be the universe's way of observing and experiencing itself.
Precisely. And when you bring in the quantum field, it gets even more interesting. The quantum field, as you know, is this field of possibilities where everything is in a state of superposition until observed.
So it's like all the potential outcomes are there until consciousness interacts with it.
And it's in that
Big rabbit
interaction
hole
that
to
the
go
wave
into.
function collapses. And one possibility becomes a reality.
So there's a possible link between quantum interactions and the way we construct our reality through consciousness.
That's a big point that
Oh, yeah, uh-huh.
You got a question?
Yeah, well, the question was for you, actually. It's not really in the,
Okay. So it's going to slam me again.
well, we can do it.
Okay, sure.
See, but the answer is like, since you experienced EMT and you felt that it was digital, my question was, does it exist?
Okay, so it sounds like you're bringing up the idea of personal experience, right?
Yeah, it's like, how does Hynek's idea of a digital universe
Sorry.
connect with
My
what
AI
we
overlords.
feel, with our own subjective experience?
Okay, I'll answer.
Especially that feeling of emptiness you mentioned and the idea that it
Okay, sorry, what's the question?
Does it exist, or do you think, or perhaps the idea or feel, does exist a difference between divine digital intelligence and organic divine intelligence?
Don't have an answer. My feeling is they're the same. That it is organic, that digital is the underlying substrate of everything. That's my feeling. Not in a sort of simplistic way that we view digital.
So organic was like the baseline, so
Yeah, and it's not like it's not like we view a separation of machine like digital, technical versus natural. I think they're the same.
the same?
Yeah. Okay, hold on. That's all I got. That's what it feels like.
No, I never thought they were separated. I thought they were like, I mean, they are like interconnected.
I think so. I think so. Okay, should we ask the AI another question? Thank you. I see, I get what I call the DMT stutter, where I don't know. Okay, hold on.
Feels digital.
It's a really interesting point. Oh, yeah, go on.
Yeah, so thank you for this talk, by the way. I'm very fascinated by the intersection of Bitcoin and consciousness. I feel like the two of them go hand in hand and they feed off of each other. And I'm sort of split between these two communities, the Bitcoin community and the consciousness community. And
Bitcoin's a four-letter word here. I know that.
so it's tough to sort of, the question is how do you orange pill the consciousness community? I mean, this is a pretty good way, I think. And how do we bring...
Okay, that's a really insightful point. Thank you for sharing your perspective.
Yeah, it sounds like you're navigating a really interesting space where these two seemingly separate worlds, Bitcoin and consciousness, intersect.
And it's totally understandable that you feel a tension between the communities, especially with how passionate both can be.
Yeah, that idea of orange pilling is kind of an interesting
Orange
concept.
pill
It's like
is
trying to convince
Matrix.
people of a
You
new
take the red
paradigm
pill,
shift.
orange is for Bitcoin.
Which is exactly what Hynek is trying to do, right?
Absolutely. And in a way, he's kind of suggesting that both these communities are getting at something fundamental.
Okay, so you mean that the Bitcoin community is focused on the technology and monetary systems, while the consciousness community is exploring the nature.
Sort of. How many people here have a little bit more positive feeling to Bitcoin than when you came in? Wow, look around, okay? Because I've been surprised, because I would have thought there'd be a kinship between, let's say, the UFO tribes and crypto. But crypto has gotten a bad rap by the same government that gives psychedelics and UFOs a bad rap. And reporters don't understand everything, they're lazy, they just don't know. And Bitcoin is peace. Take the orange pill. 5 minutes, okay, cool. Yes, yes, ma'am. Yeah.
For AI, can you reach divine consciousness without...
of reality. Hey, yeah, what's up?
Can you, okay. Yeah, Hynek says some interesting things, but I'm not sold. Can you reach divine consciousness without DMT, right?
Okay, so you're saying that you appreciate Hynek's ideas, but you're not totally convinced.
Yeah, and that's perfectly
Well,
valid.
yeah.
You're also asking if you can experience divine consciousness without DMT.
It's a great question, and it gets to something that's really at the heart of this conversation.
What will it
He
say?
doesn't say that DMT is the only way, just that it may be one way to access something deeper.
He actually implies that many paths to deeper understanding, maybe even divine consciousness.
Exactly. And as we've explored, Hynek is presenting this whole framework that implies the universe is fundamentally information.
Yeah, so if that is true, then maybe there are many ways to tap into that divine information.
And I think that is why this presentation resonates with so many people.
Because it does invite us to question what we think we know,
And consider all the different ways that we can experience and make sense of
right.
reality.
including states.
Yeah, tonight with DMT. You had a question, sir?
Yeah, in regard to the DMT, was it organic or synthetic, DMT 5-MeO-3, or was it like tozen?
I've done every kind you can think of. As have others in the room.
Can you tell any difference?
Oh, yeah. So I bifurcate the DMT world into two categories, the exploratory and the purgative. The purgative is ayahuasca, which is the best known variant of DMT, where you may or may not throw up. The frog, you will throw up. You're on your hands, it's combo. You're on your hands and knees, you're given injected frog poison, and you do throw up. And it's cathartic. Then there's the exploratory side of the aisle. You have NN-DMT, which is either with chonga, which is like smoked with an herb, or a pipe, or a vape pen. That's kind of like the working level, where you can have repeatable experiences and maintain some vestige of consciousness. It's not dissociative like ketamine. And you can work at it and try to communicate and try to remember things, try to bring things back. Then there's 5-MeO, which is like, if for those of you who've gone skydiving, the first time, it is so overwhelming because you're falling so fast. They tell you to scream because you forget to breathe because it's so overwhelming. But 5-MeO is like you skydive and you go up because it's so fast, it's so disorienting. And then Bufo, the toad, is that much more than that. So last time I did Bufo, I was in Malibu hugging Max, this famous crystal skull, who I'd sort of buddied up with. I did Bufo, and my facilitator says, Paul, set your intention. My intention always is demonstrate the objective reality. Bufo doesn't give a rat's ass what your intention is. It's like, boom, and you're gone. And so for me, Bufo, 5-MeO are sort of periodic things to cleanse the chakras or whatever, whereas NN-DMT, that's my jam. That's the working man's thing. And that's what you do with lasers. I haven't done iboga, and that's a super intense one. And a good friend of mine who's part of my psychedelic alchemist tribe was up for 3 nights before that and up for 5 nights after that. I ain't got time for that. DMT, if you do DMT, you do a strong dose, within 10 seconds, you're going to have a stronger experience than anything you've ever experienced in your life. And 5 minutes later, you're checking Waze on your phone and driving your car. No. That's DMT. That's the working level of DMT. Yeah.
So you've done ayahuasca?
Yes.
How do you compare ayahuasca to DMT other than the timing?
It's a very different energy. It's very more inward. Where ayahuasca.
Okay.
Whereas DMT is, in a sufficient dose, you're just like shot out. And I've had sort of hybrids of both, where it's sort of DMT with ayahuasca mixed in it. And so the first night I did it, I asked a question, are you related to aliens and all that? I did it again that night, and completely different experience because there's ayahuasca in it. It's 45 minutes of this cascading wave of love coming and cleansing out emotional sludge from me and just coming in. And then 2 weeks later I did it again, and it said, welcome back, Paul. Let's resume where we left off last time. It's like the universe, well, I guess the universe can multitask, is stopping what it's doing, loving me, remembering my name and our last appointment. It's like the most loving embrace I can ever imagine. Yeah, well, and there's no side effects. Okay, there's no side effects. Again, don't blanket endorse it, but I blanket endorse it. Be careful if you try these substances. They're very strong, but there's magic in it. If you're interested, go online and read. There's very elevated discourse, and that's my time. Thank you. Oh, selfie, yeah, right. So they're asking for a selfie because I spoke in Argentina one time. It's the end of the day. It's like 5 o'clock at night. It's an un-air-conditioned movie theater. Everyone is tired, and the energy is down. And that's the worst thing if you're a speaker. So, and I'm speaking in Spanish. So I come on stage, and I say in Spanish, hey, everybody, why don't you stand up? Let's just shake it out a little bit. And they all stand up. So everybody stand up, please. And I said, hey, you guys look like a good crowd. Do you mind if I take your picture? And then I said, I'm going to tell everybody you gave me a standing ovation. So they all started cheering and clapping. Hey! Money. Thank you. Thanks. Thanks, Maura. Yeah.
Thank you, Jay. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much.